Hey YouTube. I wanted to give y'all a little bit of an update. And this is going to be fairly informal, raw. I don't have a tripod set up or anything. I'm speaking to my webcam right now. I wanted to give an update because YouTube as a platform is not super conducive to like a quick um, being able to stick something up, in writing that says, "Hey, I'm taking a break." Um, if you are interested for context, I'll try to remember to leave in the description a link to a newsletter that I sent out at the beginning of June, kind of talking about why I am taking a break and reevaluating um, my public presence on social media, but also just generally my public presence. But I wanted to do a little bit, I'm going to try not to be too rambly here because there would be some irony to that. And a lot of what I've been thinking about is actually um, the kind of feelings of entitlement to taking up public space and sharing one's opinion. So I think if I were to ramble too much, and also if I spend too much time kind of navel gazing and going through my reasoning and what I've been working through, then it kind of defeats the point of what I've been working through. Um, in circles. Let me get to the point. Like, what are you talking about, Avery? So you may have noticed I haven't posted a video in a while. You may not have noticed. That's fine too. I had one about the depth year that actually accidentally went up because it was scheduled and I forgot. But I haven't been recording anything new. And basically, I have been. So this started in early June. The my initial sort of reason for taking a step back from social, public, online, etc. channels was to further evaluate my positionality as a white person in public space, in public, really, a white person in public, with the most recent wave in the United States of police brutality, responses to police brutality, um, the centering in a lot of spaces, necessary and long overdue centering of black folks, but also um, the refusal in a lot of spaces to center black folks. Um, all of that, as it was emerging in kind of late May, early June, um, made me want to take some time to reflect and consider how I am in public. And this is something that I had one I had a major change at one point when I made the decision to stop doing, for the most part, public speaking, media, uh, that kind of like brand building form of social engagement, that kind of like ambition towards having a bigger platform and justifying the size of the platform as a way to call in other white people, or like as a way to talk about other topics with an anti-racist lens. Um, that argument, well, I'm not saying that it's necessarily wrong for everyone. That argument started to feel like I might be using it as an excuse, and so I decided to step back from that kind of public engagement. But then, when I got into tarot and astrology, I really wanted to engage with people and find community, and so I launched this channel and got more active on Instagram, etc. Um, and the outlook that I was trying to have was one of kind of shared learning or shared journey. And so as I've been taking this time, um, one of the things one of the kind of starting points I had was whether the idea or concept of a shared journey, or sort of bringing people along and sharing how things are going for me from a learning place, um, while coming from a quote unquote good place, it still centers me as a white person in this community that is extremely white. Like the tarot and astrology community is way wider than, to be honest, than communities I'm used to, and it was definitely a shift. And the sort of degree to which white people in these communities are talking about anti-racism, while it certainly is on the rise, it's a much lower bar than what I had encountered in other spaces. And so it feels especially harmful in those communities to be just another, white person talking. While on the other hand, you could certainly argue that there's something in being a white person in a very white space and trying to call people in and trying to educate and raise awareness. But I think the my role I don't think my role is to educate, and even to the point of like sharing resources. There is something narcissistic in the idea of like lifting up the idea that white folks need to lift up people of color's resources for other white folks to find them, right? That should not be necessary. And there are so many white folks who in this space pass off work of people of color as their own. And I think that is a very present and possible risk that I want to be aware of, while at the same time committing in personal relationships to doing that, calling in work and doing that. Um, Peer education in private spaces. I've been thinking a lot. So that was the starting point, and as I've been thinking about what my role would be, um, yeah, I realized that it wasn't also just about my inquiry became not just about race and racism and white privilege, but also became about my own work and my own sort of shadow work and ego release work and what role in my life public online presence plays. So I've been thinking about kind of the trajectory of the internet in my life and the way the internet serves for me, and I assume for a lot of other folks, as a kind of place to almost it's almost like the invisible friend. You share, and there used to be the joke in early Twitter. There was always the joke that, oh, Twitter is just about sharing what you had for breakfast this morning. But I think it fulfills the longing that a lot of folks have for relationship and community, while also being asynchronous to some extent and allowing us to sort of say things into the void, um, that we hope that the person who will be interested in those things will see them and will pick up on them and will respond to them. Um, we don't have to find a friend who has the same interest or a friend who is available to talk right now. We can just kind of dump it and move on. And that um, used to be on IRC, on LiveJournal for a while, and journaling platforms, and there's MySpace, blah blah blah, history of internet. But I think for a long time, that is something that I've done, is approached the internet as this like invisible friend. Um, and I've been evaluating that function and feeling like that function is particularly one that I want to pull back on. That I want to, for example, use this channel less. I realize this video itself is kind of an exception to this, but less for rambling about my process, less for personal stuff, responding to tags, sharing about myself, because I do think that that is something that, while everyone should be, I mean, I think that there is a universal right to take up space, but because white people have been taking up a disproportionate amount of space for so long, and because we feel such an entitlement to that space, like we feel like when we jump into social media that of course people want to hear our opinions, um, that it could be a good practice to pull back from that and to I think when I was first thinking about it, I was thinking about the kind of metaphor of the more white people who pull back, the more space there is for people of color. I understand that in a platform with millions of people, my stepping back or engaging differently doesn't have that big of an impact. But I want to practice engaging more personally with individual people, with private communities or friend groups, um, you know, continue to engage, like, for example, in the comments on y'all's videos and social platforms. Um, but engaging with specific people as opposed to my sort of talking into the void or talking into the feed, as it were, um, feels right. And then the other thing, and the reason why I was going to record this video, and I thought honestly that this was going to be a channel relaunch. I was going to do a channel relaunch video around this time and announce what I was doing with this channel. And I thought that that was going to be about a week ago. I was convinced that that was going to be teaching, that I was going to take like a narrow frame and rededicate this channel specifically to tarot and astrology teaching, to try to depersonalize it somewhat, talk less about my own personal journey, but share things that I thought would be of service. Because I do think there's this tension between not wanting to take up too much space, but also wanting to be of service. And one thing I'm hearing when I listen to people of color talking about how white people engage is that the call is not for self-effacement. I think that there is often this tendency when you're white to get very in your feelings and then to want to just disappear and completely leave or efface yourself. I've certainly felt that, and what I'm hearing is that that actually isn't helpful, because when we go to those extremes, we actually end up projecting onto other people. Our feelings end up getting bleh onto everyone else, and that's not actually what the ask is. And so I have been thinking about, like, how can I actually be of service and but limit down my engagement to ways in which I can actually contribute something and offer something, and to not feel that because I'm white I have nothing to offer, but just to understand that um, that there's going to be this tendency because of whiteness to feel like I should offer everything, and to take a step back and focus and figure out what I have to offer that's actually of value, and think about like what have people said to me about my contributions that they want and want to hear more of, and to focus on that. So I was all ready to have this channel really be about teaching. Um because I've been told that I explain things like astrology in a easy to understand, for some people, accessible way. But this weekend I've been attending the Queer Astrology Conference, which is amazing, which is a space that centers people of color and especially Black voices. Um, it's a queer space, but it's a queer space. What I love is that it's not a queer person of color specific conference. It's a queer conference that centers people of color, and I think we need more of that. And one of the things I heard in this conference is the way that astrology, and I think you could say tarot as well, but the way that astrology puts on, modern astrology especially, I guess, puts on a Western lens, a white lens, let's think about the planets in terms of Greek and Roman mythologies, and makes it inaccessible to a lot of people, and makes a lot of people believe that Mercury is this and Venus is this because of European constructs. Like Greek and Roman constructs if you're going ancient, or modern ones. And so I definitely took that to heart, and it's making me rethink. If you're an astrology person, my Mercury was like retrograding went into first house. I was retrograding back through 12th house. So very appropriately, I am back into the shadow and back into the collective from the personal, and just thinking about, huh, you know, is it actually valuable? Even if I explain things well, like, to whom am I explaining things well? Is it that valuable to have another person explaining a kind of common astrological lens or common tarot lens that you could probably get in a million places? Um, does that have value? Um, or is that appropriate, even if it does have value, when folks are so hungry for other options? So I'm rethinking, and I'm not certain that going to. I'm not certain that I'm going to maintain this channel. I'm not certain if there is something that I want to use this space for. I'm going to keep this space, and I'm going to continue using this account to reply to other people, um, to see you on your own videos. But I'm back into a space of questioning what goes here. While at the same time, I think another thing I'm wrestling with, and yet this went into navel gazing. I didn't mean for it to, but please accept my apologies. It's really hard for me to like not be egocentric. Um, I I had a great astrology reading. Shout out, by the way, if you are looking for an astrology reader, um, the mythic, no wait, the mythical landscape on Instagram. Highly recommend. But I had this astrology reading, and I've just been wrestling since it with my wanting to balance not self-effacing but also being of service, honoring the collective, not being so egocentric, and then also looking at the ways in which my chart and my when I look at what my life purpose may be, or how I may carry out my life purpose, um, that there's a lot that points to. I have Mercury on the midheaven, so there's this this idea that like the thing that I came here to do was to communicate. Um, So I'm just balancing that. I'm trying to see what that would be. And also my Mercury is in Pisces, and realizing from that, like that, and I'm sure this rambling video is a good example. I think of myself as a good communicator, but in a lot of ways I'm not. Uh, hmm, Not a clear communicator in the ways that most people understand. So if you have Mercury in Pisces, it's kind of like Mercury is trying to get through these murky waters and doesn't have access to all the tools that it might in another sign. It's not to say you're a bad communicator, but you may be a particularly creative communicator. You probably communicate in ways that may be difficult for some people to understand. And so I'm just like recognizing that. And so trying to figure out also my ninth house, like which is related to publishing. And so I've thought for years about writing a book. And then I keep going back and forth and being like, oh, I shouldn't write a book though. I don't like, do I do this? Do I not do this? I had an idea that like I would write a book and then I would donate all the proceeds, which I think is still a good idea. But it's once again, it's like, do we really want to get more white European knowledge of things into the world? Not sure about that. And then I thought about like, oh, could I teach on things that are really white and European? Like, could I teach a bunch of people how to do Excel? But like, there are plenty of resources if you want to learn Excel. I don't think I'm adding much. So yeah, so this is my navel gazing identity crisis. I feel kind of embarrassed or weird putting this up, but I'm going to. I'm not, by the way, asking for cookies or asking for like reassurances. Um, I'm sharing this because as uncomfortable as it is to share in this fashion, I do want folks who enjoy this channel and my little bundle of you, 200 or so subscribers, who enjoy this channel to know why there hasn't been content and to understand, what's up. Um, but uh, I don't have a like polished 2 minute thing that I can give you, which is why this is kind of descended into navel gazing because it's actually kind of hard not to. Um, and give any update at all. So that was very rambly, but that's all I've got to say about that. I will say that I've been leaning towards not having an Instagram feed, but I think I will still at this point I have been thinking that I will use Twitter to um that I will rebrand my Twitter to be less of a like public Twitter. I'm not gonna lock it, I don't think, but that I'm gonna probably change my handle to my name uh, and make it more sort of if folks want to follow me as a individual person and are interested in being in a relationship with me and hearing about me, um, they can follow, but like no one is expected to, and folks are free to unfollow if they had previously followed for more like activisty content. Um, because I think that is maybe one way to address some of this is to, there's nothing wrong with like wanting to express opinions or wanting to even ramble, but like doing that in a way, not using hashtags and stuff and trying to bring people in, but doing that to folks who already are in relationship with you and might want to hear it, seems more correct. I don't know. So Twitter, it's currently at Queer Activist. I will probably change it to my name, but when you change your Twitter name, it still redirects. So you can at any time go to at Queer Activist, and it should still redirect you. Unfortunately, I wish I could give that name up, honestly, to an activist of color, but I don't think that's possible. Um, yeah. So if you want more frequent updates, follow on Twitter. I probably will post there from time to time. But I'm gonna kind of continue, I think, this summer to work through things and to evaluate my place in the world. Yeah, if you made it this far, thanks, I guess, for listening. And I appreciate you.